and welcome to this special event this afternoon here at Harvard University. Thank you for making the time to be here with us. My name is Danilo Petranovic, and I work at the Abigail Adams Institute, an independent scholarly institute located here in Cambridge, dedicated to promoting humanistic learning at Harvard. We have some of our material there that you may want to check out. Before I say anything else about our panel, I would like to begin by thanking our friends and co-sponsors who have made today's event possible. First, I'd like to acknowledge Professor Tyler Vanderbilt and Harvard's Human Flourishing Program, which enabled us to be here in Harvard's government department, or Center for Government and International Studies, I believe is the full name, this building. And I believe, Tyler, you had your offices here at one point, many years ago. So this is where it began, 8, 9 years ago, something like that. Our other co-sponsor, of course, is IECO, which stands for Institute for Ethics in Communications and Organizations, represented today by Rita Hakomi, Professor Guillén's closest associate. I hope I didn't butcher the name, Rita. I practiced it. Thank you. And finally, I would like to thank our capable staff at the Abigail Adams Institute who are recording this event with the help of Luis as well from IECO. So thank you. We'll be recording the whole thing this afternoon. So we'll go for just under 2 hours. Professor Manuel Guillén spent almost 10 years living and working here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, traveling back and forth between Valencia, Spain, and Boston. Among many other posts, he was a senior fellow with us at the Abigail Adams Institute, where he, over the years, presented several papers and commented on many more. Professor Guillén's professional expertise was in business and management, and his real expertise was in helping people by taking a genuine interest in them. I and my family and many of our students and colleagues all were beneficiaries of Manuel's attention, interest, and care. Today's panel is tasked with unpacking the main arguments of his last book, which there's the English edition and Spanish edition that we have displayed here, titled Motivations in Organizations. Ideally, we will assist you in illuminating some aspect of your own approach to work, your company, and society at large. So we have assembled a first-rate cast of contributors and sometime collaborators of Professor Guillén in order to do that. Kicking us off will be Professor Donna Hicks on my immediate left, associate at the Weatherhead Center of International Affairs here at Harvard. And she also has an office in this building as well, I was just reminded. So she's also an author of at least 2 excellent books on human dignity, and I know Professor Guillén talked about them a lot. I think, Donna, you were on every one of IECO's panels over the last 9 years. That's true. So
I should get an award reading.
Yes, probably. Thereafter, we'll hear from Dr. Kevin Majors, cognitive behavioral psychiatrist and founder of the platform Optimal Work, which I encourage you to check out. After that, will be Professor Vanderbilt, professor of epidemiology at the Harvard School of Public Health, and as I mentioned earlier, director of the Human Flourishing Program, our partners. Then we will have Professor Michael Pearson at the Fordham University Business School, and then joining us over Zoom, Professor William English at the Georgetown University Business School, and co-author with Professor Guillén an important paper about the logic of gift, about which we will no doubt hear shortly. And then Rita Hakomi will go last. Rita met Manolo 12 years ago when she began her PhD in Valencia, Spain. After completing her dissertation, she worked closely with Manolo on promoting truly human leadership in organizations. She is currently the director of IECO and the executive director of the IECO Business Ethics Chair at the University of Valencia, both institutions founded by Manuel Guillén. Okay, last thing I'll say. Each panelist will speak for about 10 minutes, some a little more, others a little less, as we prearranged. And after that, we'll have a conversation that will include members of the live audience. I will keep time, and my goal will be to conclude today's event a few minutes before 6 o'clock this evening. You are all then welcome to join us for a small reception at the Abigail Adams Institute. Thank you.
thank you, Danilo, for convening this, and the Abigail Institute for hosting it. I should apologize for not being there in person. I wish I were, although Manolo is perhaps partially responsible for me not being there. I was reflecting on one of the last times we were in person together. We were at Burdick's in Harvard Square getting some hot chocolate. And, I was telling him about I married this great woman and, we were hoping to have a family soon. And in my notes, I literally used the word, his face lit up. He said, "I've been praying for you for this very thing." And he sort of described, his hopes for us and how that was already on his mind and something he had been praying for before we even, had that conversation. So perhaps Manolo's intercessions played a little role, but we are expecting another child in the next week or two here, so that's why I'm not down there in person. I also wanted to say a few more words about Manolo on a personal level before turning to this chapter. I don't remember my first meeting with him, but I remember my second very well. I think the first was probably at a social event where we established we had similar interests, so we scheduled a follow-up meeting. And he had come over to Kirkland's dining room. I remember it being a sort of sunny morning where we sat there, and there was so much energy. It was like, drinking from a fire hydrant. He had ideas. We were talking about our mutual interests and how he wanted to see that developed here, and his idea for doing a project there, and people he wanted to put in touch with. And so it was this, like many people describe, this energy and dynamism that he expressed from at the very beginning of our knowing each other. And I do recall, he asked at one point in that conversation, would you ever think of teaching in a business school? Of course, being an academic, I would be interested in teaching anywhere at that point in my career. Where a job is a job, and I knew about business schools as potentially a career path. But it was only in that conversation, as we talked through some of these ideas, that I sort of, for the first time, saw how my interests in ethics, in particular, could actually be linked up to various sorts of questions in business ethics and management, and that it made sort of sense that maybe a business school would be my home. So there's a way in which Manolo is also partially responsible for the job I have today as well. From there, very quickly, we started engaging in projects together. We had, the famous RCC IECO video series that, he was sort of the role of Oprah in, bringing all these people together, getting an audience, live studio audience, putting these panels together, figuring out the moderation and the questions, the choreography. He had a vision there from the time, he first conceived of it, and he executed it. And those videos are, seen around the world today. I think that's the way that I really got to know, Michael and Donna and Rita and Tomas and many others. And, what a tremendous success they were to go from that, it was entirely Manolo's, concept and vision that made that happen and had such a lasting impact. A year or two after that, we were co-authoring a paper together. This is a paper on the logic of gift, which I think to this day is my most cited business ethics paper. It came out in BEQ, and it has interesting resonances with the chapter I'm going to talk about, I was assigned to talk about here today. So this is chapter 7. This is a chapter on the logic of love. And he begins, as you might not be surprised to find out, given what Donna said earlier, it begins with him having a conversation with a stranger. He was coming to Boston, going through customs, and the customs agent says, or the immigration officer says, what are you doing here? He said, well, I'm writing a book. Oh, what's it about? So he has apparently a 10-minute conversation with the customs agent about the map of motivations, and reports back, favorably, that it all made sense to the customs agent. He says, yeah, it's so important to have a job you love, and he said, my job as a customs agent, it isn't the most important job in the world, it's not the highest paying job in the world, but it's exactly what I want. It's good hours, and I'm able to spend time with my family, and I get to meet interesting people. And he sort of talks through how he's satisfied through his work, and how his work also complements and makes sense of all these other aspects of his life. And so Manolo sort of ends that those first few pages saying, "Isn't it amazing that this person knew this all sort of intuitively. Do I still have something to say in this chapter? Is this something that is, so widely known? And, I think one thing that comes out in the discussion of love in this chapter is that sort of from the phenomenology of it, it's something that is accessible to everybody. It's accessible to all human beings, and that, Manolo suggests, is precisely because it's essential to who we are as human beings. Love is sort of constitutive of human life, of its meaningfulness. Now the challenge is, as Michael alluded to, this isn't language that we're comfortable with, certainly in management literature and academia at large. And in this chapter, Manolo sort of reviews reasons for that. He thinks through critiques of scientism, of reductionism, of analytic frameworks that can't make love intelligible. These are the dominant frameworks that we work with in a lot of academia, often for good reasons. It's useful sometimes to be reductive. It's useful, for various, narrow purposes. But the argument of the larger chapter is that love is in fact the key for a meaningful life and a key for flourishing organizations. And we should try to understand how it works better. This chapter has what I would say is deeply Augustinian themes. So to review our Aquinas and Augustine, Aquinas has that in the Secunda Secundae says, is love the form of the virtue? Yes, it is. Okay, so love in Aquinas' terms means that sort of the ends for which we do things. He says love, all the virtues have ends, and those ends are somewhat united sort of in our ultimate loves. Augustine has a slightly different way of thinking about virtues and love, where you might say all virtues are forms of love. All virtues are ways of expressing love in different contexts and forms and excellencies. And, in this chapter, Manolo is sort of unpacking how love works in all these different ways. And I was reminded too of the sort of famous quip in The City of God, where Augustine is thinking about what we today would call sort of social ontology. What makes groups of people? And he advances his claim that communities are constituted by common objects of love. This is what makes a people. It's what binds us together, common objects of love. And in this chapter, what Manolo is doing is, I think, working with this Augustinian theme to uncover all the ways that love works in relationships, in families, in friendships, but sort of most importantly for his purposes, in organizations. And the key insight, the key claim that he fleshes out in all sorts of different ways here is on page 167, where he says, love begets love. It's a generative thing. And on 168, just going to read a short passage here. He says, quote, "This logic of love, which begets a logic of gift, expresses a deep truth about humans, that their flourishing is enabled through relationships of uncalculated giving and grateful receiving. But this logic also has practical implications for organizational management. When in harmony with the logics of exchange and duty, the logic of gift enables greater creativity, freedom, and responsibility, inspiring trust and promoting commitment as no other incentive systems can do." So there's this idea that love is this socially generative thing, that organizations that are somehow able to give expression to that are going to be organizations that flourish in sort of unique ways, and that individuals who are able to also sort of authentically think through the right hierarchy of loves, and this is also a theme with Augustine and Manolo, sort of the right ordering of loves, and it's this question of harmony he alludes to, how to put this all in harmony, are themselves going to be more fulfilled and also going to have an energy and a dynamism to their activities. So the chapter also has some interesting engagement with the topic of the theological as sort of the basis for ultimately ordering loves in our life, as well as this basis for gratitude, this sort of pervasive gratitude that he thinks should characterize human existence. The other interesting thing about this chapter, and it's been alluded to already, is that Manolo is constantly wrestling with the, you might think, the ideal student and the potential skeptic, particularly this charge of idealism. Is this realistic? Is this just a sort of utopian pie in the sky? Wouldn't it be nice? What are the practical implications of this? What does this do for us? What does this actually mean? And I think the answer to that question, I think there is a kind of compelling answer to that. But the proof is sort of in the pudding. The proof, as it were, of the insights of this chapter, of sort of the truth about love, about its generative qualities. The evidence for that, is all over the place, but particularly it's sort of in Manolo's life and how he conducted it. It was this unbelievably generative thing. Love begat love. He was a dynamo, always networking, coming up with ideas for meaningful collaboration, always helping people, always giving. And it was so fruitful, evidenced, I think in part by the presence of all of us in this room today. So, I think we should be grateful to Manolo for, as Michael said, sort of giving us the language to talk about these things, which are so vitally important, and yet which are unfortunately unintelligible within many of the dominant frameworks that we use in academia, because it really is revealing some deep truth, and it's a deep truth that Manolo lived, and that we were all were able to benefit from. So I'll leave it there.